Welcome to episode 150 of Rebirth Revolution. My name is Melissa Olson. This week we've reached the 3-year anniversary of Rebirth Revolution. That kind of shocks me. Thanks to everyone who has hung in with this itty-bitty podcast, and thanks to everyone who is new here. I really appreciate the opportunity to do this project. Here's the question I want to ask this week. What is our job when we take on the role of being a parent? What are we actually trying to do? Here's what I think. We are tasked with turning out a kind, compassionate person of integrity who is competent and capable of functioning in this complicated world, and they need to be able to function on their own. That doesn't sound too outlandish. But it is not the goal of some parents. Some parents think that their role is to give their child everything that they could ever want so that they know that they are loved. Some parents think that the more you can do for your child, the better and more loving parent you are. I disagree. It is not a loving act to release an incompetent person out into the world once they turn 18. It is not a loving act to send a person out into the world who has no concept of the difference between right and wrong. It is not a loving act to send a person who has never been anything other than egocentric out into the world. It is not a loving act to send a person out into the world who does not know the basics of taking care of themselves, like cooking and laundry and cleaning and money management. This reminds me of my mother. Her mother did not want any of her 3 children to have chores of any type, so they all left her home with no skills whatsoever. My mother ended up raising and feeding 6 children, and she had to figure it out. But when my mom was well into raising all these kids, she went back to see her mother. She volunteered to make some popcorn, which was a staple in my family. Her mother said that she would do it because my mother surely could not be trusted with the task. My mother had not advanced in her mother's eyes in all those years after all those children. So her mother wasn't doing a kindness for her children. She had somehow decided that her children were not competent, and she had never had any intention of helping them become competent. She would rather do it herself. My mom felt really hurt to be seen this way by her own mother. Your child's urge to try to do things presents itself very early in life. And it can be a major inconvenience at times, but it is one of those things that is a show of respect for your child. It is a reasonable boundary that each and every child should be able to expect as they learn and grow. As often as possible, for every "I do" that a toddler insists on, and every declaration along those lines that every child makes, those need to be honored. It is an act of love to let your child develop their own competence, even though we all know that a toddler putting on their own shoes can turn into something wild and dramatic. If you are doing for a child something that they wish to do for themselves, you have to ask yourself, why? Is it because you can only deal with it being done your way? Are you only comfortable if something is done on your timetable? Is it because it runs contrary to your self-definition of being the loving, sacrificing parent? Are you managing your own anxiety by staying busy instead of being a peaceful observer? Are you really not okay with your child making mistakes? Are you unable to watch them struggle without losing your composure? If it is any of those reasons, or any like them, you need to recognize that this issue belongs to you, not your child. This is your work to do, separate from your child. This is a gap in awareness that is just itching to be addressed by you and for you. Leave your child out of it. Your job as a parent is to help your child grow into the most competent person that they can be. And that magically enhances their sense of self and their confidence in the outside world. Imagine how stressful the whole college transition is to begin with, and then heap on top of that the awareness that you're unable to figure out how to feed yourself, get your clothes clean, and the rest of the basics. Then you have to figure out college and basic life skills at the same time. This is parental malpractice. It is our job to send them out there with tools, and life skills are some of the most important tools. I grew up in a time when the gender roles were very clearly defined. Men went to work, mowed the lawn, took out the trash, and took care of the cars. Women did everything else, though many of them worked as many hours as men. Not a great deal for women. The reworking of this deal is still a battleground. But anyway, I grew up steeped in the patriarchy, where women made all gatherings and holidays happen, in addition to orchestrating everyday life. They did all the planning, the shopping, the cooking, the wrapping, and the serving of the meals. Then they got to do all of the cleanup. Honestly, there was no sweeter deal than being a man when I was growing up. Men could decide they wanted people over, and the women had to jump too and do all the labor that entailed. Even if it was her birthday, even if it was Mother's Day. All the men had to do was eat, drink, and be merry. So I grew up and became a mother. I had 3 sons. Being a stay-at-home mom, I did all the things that the women before me had done, but I knew that I didn't want to raise sons who were as incapable as some of the grown men I knew. I couldn't imagine that it would feel good to feel hungry and not know how to go into the kitchen and make yourself whatever you wanted to eat. I couldn't imagine it would feel good to be out of clean clothes and have no idea how to remedy that. I really hate the feeling of being incompetent, and I didn't want that for my sons. I also wanted them to be better partners than the men of my generation. But you can't just want something when you have kids. You have to make that happen. You have to let them in the kitchen to help. You have to teach them how to use the washer and dryer. You have to teach them how to clean house and then make it part of their life on a regular basis. You, as the parent, have to teach the skills. When my kids were still in elementary school, they would tell me that they wanted to have friends over. I would say, fine, but you need to do the work to prepare for that. The basement was their domain, so they would first have to clean up the basement. Then they would have to figure out what their friends would want to eat and drink while they were here, so I would take them to the grocery store to buy whatever they had planned. They would do all the prep work. I figured that with this strategy, they would either decide to never have friends over, or they would get really good at putting together a gathering. I was okay with either outcome. I just knew that I was not going to raise men who had the same expectations that the men of my generation had. My sons would be full participants in life. The good news is that they have grown up to be some of the most competent, caring people I know, and boy, can they cook. Children feel really good about themselves when they learn new tasks and have an opportunity to display their competence. They feel strong and appreciated and necessary. These are the feelings that we want our children to have, but they can't conjure those feelings up when everything is done for them. There are so many mysteries in life, but there are many everyday things that are not mysterious in the least. Nor are they the jobs of one gender or the other. They are life skills that all children should be taught while they are still under our care and guidance. Picture how you want them to turn out, and then concoct your own teaching plan. Thanks for returning for another week of Rebirth Revolution. I really appreciate your time. Rebirth Revolution can be found on all the podcast apps, the music apps, and full episodes play on our YouTube and Facebook pages. You can always find all episodes on rebirthrevolution.com. Please download, rate, and review whenever you can. Until next week, figure out how to help young people get ready for life. Figure out how you can best teach the tools. Stick with your COVID precautions and celebrate competence. Remember, you are loved exactly as much as every other person on the planet, not 1 ounce more or 1 ounce less. Stay strong and safe and loving.